topic today is Making Cambridge Yours, and I'm going to be talking about resources and ideas to help develop student confidence and independent learning, and provide resources for teachers to help them prepare students for Cambridge English Qualifications. Also, we're going to be thinking about how to think about readiness for the exam and what kind of tools we can use to deal with that question as well. I've got lots of information for you, and the idea is the information we're going to give you will help teachers in whatever situation you find yourself in at the moment, whether you're teaching face-to-face, whether you're teaching remotely or in a hybrid context. We appreciate that these times are challenging. So the resources are being designed increasingly to be able to cope with that variety of circumstances. So we hope there'll be something for everyone. We will be giving you a follow-up to this session where we provide all the links that I mentioned. So there are lots of resources, so don't worry, you will be getting that next week with a complete list, because there's a lot of things to consider. Now, one of the things about helping students be ready and, of course, develop their confidence is having a clear goal. And a Cambridge English Qualification can provide that, and indeed an exam can provide that kind of direction, and you kind of have a map to get there. And, of course, there are different things along the way that will help you to get ready. And, of course, I appreciate that some of you will have a short term and some of you will have a much longer period before you actually take your students take the tests. So let's think about those step-by-step development and helping students develop their language skills so that many of them will actually get to those top levels and maybe even get to C2 proficiency. So wherever your students are now, hopefully there'll be some resources that will help them on their learning journey. A goal without a plan is just a wish. I think this is a fantastic quote. I need it for myself as much as for students. But I do think it is helpful to think that if you've got an aim, if you plan it, then you're more likely to achieve it, of course. So some of the things that we're going to look at will help teachers and students think about that goal and think about the pathway to get there. So the resources I'm going to show you, yes, are based for Cambridge English preparation courses, but you'll find that many of them are applicable in a variety of situations as well. So if we think about the basic teacher resources, this is just an example. I think at the beginning of any course or during the course, it's always useful for a teacher to look at the handbook for teachers, a sample paper, look at the practice test converter, which shows the readiness of your students or can help you in that decision to see whether your students are ready to take their exam or how far away they are, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, to help you with your planning. There are, of course, also on Cambridge English TV YouTube channel, you'll find samples of the speaking tests, and you can see candidates taking the exam with full comments from the examiners, which may be useful for you as a teacher, but also you may wish to share some of that information. And certainly it's a good idea to show the students what the exam is going to be like. The range of resources, of course, covers all levels, and just so you see that this is the colour at the moment, so you've got the most up-to-date one. It's always a good idea to make sure you've got purple if you're doing it for schools, and you've got the one with orange if you're doing the standard version of the tests. Now, inside the handbook, of course, you will be able to look at every single part of the test, understand the assessment, know about the marks, and of course, see what the different focuses is of each part. There are also tips and ideas in the handbook for preparing for each of those parts of the test. Again, even if you're experienced, I think it's always a good idea to have a look at those again every now and again to check that you're on track. Now, I mentioned the practice test converter. It converts the scores in the practice tests into the Cambridge English scale, and therefore you can relate them to the CFR Now, it's important that you use the official Cambridge English practice tests for this, otherwise the conversion may not be reliable. And also, just to say, this is very much about readiness, an indication of readiness, and it's not obviously necessarily going to be exactly the mark that they get or the grade they get in the live exam. So just a kind of word of warning, but certainly extremely useful, and it helps a teacher have more confidence as well. So you can see that each part of the test explains how you mark it, how that relates to the test score, and how that relates to the final exam. So obviously these are available for each different level. So you need to choose the one that's relevant to the exam you're interested in. Now, time is of the essence, as always, and making sure that we make the most of it and without having to prepare everything is also about knowing where to find tools. And sometimes that's a challenge because there's so much material available. So for those of you who are preparing for A2, B1, B2 for schools tests, there is a very useful tool called Weekly, weeklycambridgeenglish.org. This helps you save time finding resources. It's free, and basically it allows you to collect the materials from the website without you having to spend lots of time looking for it. You can tell Weekly what exam you're interested in, how much time you have available per week, and how many weeks you have available. It will build a plan for you. Obviously, you click the button and it takes you on to the next stage. But just to say, of course, it's easy if you have to change it, but certainly at the moment with changes because of the current situation, you may need to actually review your plan, and it's very simple to just adjust it to whatever time you have available. Then once you've clicked, it allows you to prioritize your the skills. So if you want to have speaking at the top of the list, you click those upward arrows and it goes to the top, etc., so that you can actually decide the priority for your group. You can also, if you're working with a colleague, you might decide you want to share the same plan, or you may decide to share it with your students, depending on how you feel about that or whether it's appropriate, but it is possible too. And you basically will get a weekly plan that looks something like this, where you can see each skill is outlined. And clicking on any of those will take you through directly to the material. So for example, in week 4, I'm clicking on the writing topic. It takes me to a writing part 1 task with a lesson plan. There we go. So a couple of clicks and you've got the resource that you might be interested in. By the way, if you decide you want to move a resource from one week to the other, it's a very simple case of moving it. You can also add your own resources to the plan so that you're keeping them in one place. So if there are particular activities that you found useful, you can add those to the plan too. And we can see here that there is also a specific reference for the teacher. So the support for the teacher section again might give you something about assessment, or it might take you to a webinar about something where you can obviously, if you haven't seen it before, you might be able to find out more about a particular topic. So again, it's not just thinking about the student, it's also thinking about the teacher. You can print it out, etc. There's lots of things you can do with it, but I encourage you to explore it. Also for your teachers, so if your students, thinking about the teacher doing some planning and also helping the students look at that plan and take ownership, because of course that's going to build their confidence, and we're trying to move them to be more independent where possible and help them to keep track of their learning and perhaps to push themselves a little bit harder so that they can actually feel their progress, see their progress, and be more involved in the whole learning cycle. So again, coming back to the idea of dreams and goals, I do think it's useful to talk to students about that planning stage and making it as practical as possible, so that you talk, okay, so your goal is this, how far away is that goal? It might be that they're doing B2 now, but their ultimate goal is to get to C2. So how are we going to stage that goal, and how are we going to make it practical so that they actually are thinking, not just depending on the teacher for that goal, that they get involved in the process. And I think the idea of creating a sense of urgency, so that it's not, it takes time to learn a language, but it means you have to work, you have to keep going, keep that motivation to actually move closer to that goal, so that the teacher can help with that by occasionally checking in with how the student is making progress, how they see their own progress. There are tools like this one, which are easy to download, just makes it a little bit more formal, getting the students to actually think about their own planning of learning and what they've achieved, giving them some kind of SMART goal where they actually put some time bound on it as well. And I also think that you may do things like this, where you ask them about their progress. I love using mentimeter.com, and it's just a digital way to check in with your students. You might do an exit poll at the end of a lesson, or you might do at some stage in the course to just see how they're feeling about their progress. Some people use traffic lights with red, amber, green, and obviously if you're teaching online, physically showing whether you're feeling your orange or your green day, you need some more understanding. Have you feel okay with it, or could I'd like to hold on a bit and focus a little bit more about it. Again, involving students in that process. So we're going to have about half an hour looking at resources for teachers and learners. And this is where I just remind you that you will get a list of links, because I go through quite a lot of material, and I hope that you will find some of them useful. So I take you to the website because I'd like to focus on some parts of it to also help you navigate through the website to re-find the resources, because it's not always immediately obvious, I have to say. So in that section, so we just go back to there, going back to the classroom, is where you will find lesson plans. Now, the lesson plans at the bottom here are the ones designed for the teacher to use. We'll come back to talk about the self-study materials in a while, but the lesson plans that you see here obviously cover all skills, and if you click on obviously any of those, it will give you a whole range of materials. There are actually about 80 now. My colleagues counted them in UK. They're basically for classroom teaching, but also there's a very big focus on online teaching and giving you options for whether you're in the face-to-face or online. And of course, these lesson plans mainly cover these levels. There are materials for proficiency too, but the majority that are mentioned in the lesson plans are covering those levels. One of the important parts of the lesson plan, and again, ready-made material you just download, is helping the students to really focus on what the exam is about, what they have to do, what they don't need to do as well. And there are tasks like these, which are obviously you might do at the beginning of a course if you're getting them to focus on perhaps scanning through a sample test and understanding the ultimate goal. Or if you're close to the exam, you might just be reviewing, so they're really conscious and ready for the exam. So of course, there's an answer key for the teacher, and it comes in this lesson plan, as this is just an example for B2. So you can find those for different skills as well. These self-study ones I'll just mention here look like the lesson plans, but they're designed for students. So they're student-friendly language. So that's the difference between the two sets. You can give a student this lesson plan and ask them to work through the different stages, and they should be able, that's obviously one of the things about encouraging them to be independent, but super material. And again, you can choose different skills and different parts of the test. So what we're going to do now is have a little look at some ideas for each of the skills. And then we'll also look at some other extra resources that are available too as well. Vocabulary, of course, without any doubt, is important for every part of the test. I put it with reading, but it's equally important for listening, writing, speaking. Of course, it's very overtly tested in the use of English papers in B2, C1 and C2. And use of English is tested, of course, at A2 and B1 in the reading and writing parts of the test, and listening. So vocabulary will be there. Now, those of you who are familiar with the tests will know that at the lower levels, including the young learners as well, but I'm not going to speak about that now, there are vocabulary lists that you can download. And this is your guide for the vocabulary that will be included or can be included, and certainly is a very useful tool. Again, they're free to download. And if we want to look at the material that goes with the word lists, you need to go to this section of the website. So that's just to tell you that. And with the word lists, there are now new classroom activity booklets available with new ideas, with options for online and offline. They have in the word list, of course, you have the alphabetical listing, so you can look at the grammatical side of things, but you also have my favorite bit, which is the topic lists. And those, again, are really useful, and you can do lots of things with them. The good news is UK have produced the new booklets to go with the existing posters, but you'll find that the ideas in there are integrated skills as well as vocabulary development as well. So those are there are actually another 2 which are not on the screen. So you've got 3 per level. So those are free to download. And as I said, you get a face-to-face lesson plan with a poster, and you also get an online version, so that if you're dealing with the challenges, there are some nice ideas and also links to other resources connected to this, which will be very helpful. Now, for those of you who are working at the higher levels, B2, C1, C2, of course, there is no word list. So where can we look? Apart from looking in a dictionary, of course, and a good learner's dictionary is again, available online, is a useful resource. But English Vocabulary Profile, I know some of you will be familiar with it, but those of you who are not, this is a great treasure. It's obviously as a result of research and has been a combined project over many years, and it provides an English vocabulary profile. There's also a grammar profile too, but I'll just mention the vocabulary one, because if you're looking at these higher levels, then you can go to English vocabulary profile, choose the level, your CFR level you're interested in, search by topic if you wish or not. And then, of course, you'll be provided with a list which you can then explore, or your students can explore. And you can see this particular one, we're looking at personality. And what's nice is that you can go further down and look at the way the word is used in different contexts. So we've got the word bitter here, but we've got feelings and taste. And again, we can go further down and we're looking at learner examples as well as dictionary examples. And what I find interesting is also you will get country-specific examples. And I thought this was appropriate to choose one, a Greek example. I was petrified as well as confused. Well, I hope that wasn't in the exam. But anyway, a fantastic resource. And as you can see, you can also get the pronunciation through this as well. There's lots of things to explore with English Vocabulary Profile. Staying with vocabulary, of course, we have now, this year, we have new B2 posters, and these are slightly different from the ones at A2 and B1, because they're actually we've got even more range of activities around them. And of course, the topics are typically B2, the environment and technology. So quite useful for some of the challenging topics as well. And they also have a downloadable lesson plans and activities for each one. So saving time for the teacher, and also very creative and interesting. So this is just an example for you. So if we look at the environment, there's always a quote And the idea that, of course, that's an opportunity for speaking or potentially for writing, getting students to think about it, talk about it, then maybe leading into writing an article, writing a review, writing some appropriate piece of writing based around it. And I think if you're doing it online, so for example, we can turn that into another question. I'd like to ask you actually to vote. So we're thinking about Greta Thunberg. So do you think she's made a difference? Can you write in the chat, yes, no, or undecided? Let's see, it's going to be very fast, but let's see what you think. So yes, no, or undecided. I can't, yes, okay, yes, we get low, undecided, okay. Yeses, lots of yeses. She's trying, yes, I agree. Not really, okay, fair enough. So again, if we were able to put you in breakout rooms, we could have a very interesting discussion now about that topic. And of course, you can extend it by which 3 adjectives would you choose to describe Greta? Would you like me to give me an adjective for Greta in the chat box? Let's see what we get. But thank you for writing in the chat. I do appreciate it. So give me an adjective for Greta. Determined, resourceful, daring, fantastic, inspirational. Look at those great words. Passionate, brave, daring. So again, if you're doing this online and you can't speak, obviously these simple activities can stimulate at least a little bit of engagement. And honest, lovely words, honest, fresh, passionate, super. Thank you for that. Bold, very persistent. Oh, that's great. Thank you, Chris. And optimistic, says Marina. On that positive note, I'll go to the next slide. Now, the posters have phrasal verbs. For each poster, there's a kind of a collection of phrasal verbs around the topic, which of course is a great way of using them. And again, obviously, there is information about the phrasal verb and sample expressions. The lesson plans obviously consider whether you're teaching online or offline, and have a clear focus on grammar as well as vocabulary, and may have integrated skills lessons. Interestingly, also ideas if you're coping with a socially distanced classroom. There is focus on grammar, and so you will have a language summary as well. So each one is different, and in this particular one, obviously it's looking at conditionals, but again, appropriate to the context of really using it in the context which students should find helpful, also for their writing as well as their speaking. So each poster also links to topics, it links to the phrasal verbs, it's obviously got other activities around it. It can be used more than once, which I think is important, because you need to refresh the topic, go back to the topic, and of course there is everything for the teacher. Now, I just like to say it's also a basis for students to use as a model to create their own posters. There are materials for playing games. So, for example, the categories game, sorry, can't say that. How many words can you think of for technology, hard word for technology? You can get them to write in the chat. You can use spelling, corrects for spelling, writing a sentence, etc. So lots of things around that. The vocabulary focus, there's the obviously downloadable practice material. You can see how it moves into extension into writing. So absolutely super, ready to go. Playing the game bingo, using the phrasal verbs in the bingo context. So again, you can go back and revisit. Now, if we move rapidly into reading and developing reading skills, I'd like to just talk about Read and Improve very briefly. This is using artificial intelligence. It allows you to choose, from the website, you can choose the level that you're interested in. And when you click on it, it will come up with articles which are current from the internet, which have been assessed for their level by the artificial intelligence algorithm. And it means that you can obviously choose easier or more difficult. The topic can be the same. So we've got education, but you can see how you've even got C2+, So again, if you're challenging your students, you can certainly. And what's fantastic about it is you get the text, and then you're able to, looking at the text, you can highlight any word that you are interested in just by clicking on the word. So here we've got the word chaffing. So if you've got, your shoes, your socks are chaffing your feet. And then, of course, you can see how we can look at the vocabulary around it. We can look at it in a word cloud. So where is it used? Where's it most familiar? What words appear with the word chaff? So you can click on the word and see how it's connected. Oh, it's very up to date. You can see how these are recent. In fact, I looked at this morning for this one. So you can see how the topics are really up to date. So fantastic resource. It's free. You can click. Once you've chosen your word, you can click and find other articles that have that vocabulary in. So if you're wanting to enhance that particular item, you can. So here's an example, looking at treasure trove, and of course you can see it's available in a range of articles. Using articles, of course, is very important, and I think if we go into use of English, using closed tests, creating your own closed tests, and this is a free resource, or at least there is a free aspect of it, and I did this material with the free part, because there's a paid part, but I'm not recommending that, I'm recommending the free part. You can actually create your own closed tests and decide, how you make the gaps. Your students could potentially make these too, and of course you can see here how it tells you what to do. So there's your close, and you can have it with the word showing or not showing. So you can do open close or multiple choice close. Fantastic again. So if you're thinking about use of English activities and you want to extend or get your students involved, and this is a simpler one, which is you just paste your text, choose how you want to create the gaps, and of course you paste in your text. Once you've chosen how you want to create the gaps, it will create you a simple text. You can see a good way to start is taking out the articles so that students can revisit the same text more than once as you change the gaps. Preparing for listening. So what can we do for listening? Just a couple of ideas here, because obviously I haven't got time to do every single part of the test, but I do want to draw your attention to this fantastic site if you haven't used it, breakingnewsenglish.com. Again, free website. You can choose the same text and use it at different levels. You get the audio, it goes into reading, there's a focus on vocabulary. I mean, superb. Again, something to help support you in at different levels. Filmenglish.com. Again, if you want to use short videos, they've been selected by Film English. Some are free, some are not. So again, just be aware of that. But some of the older material is great and it's free and absolutely suitable for different levels, as you can see here. It has loads of activities and materials to go with it. So if you want to do listening skills, reading skills around the topic, speaking skills, it provides loads of ideas. This is just step 11 and 12. So there are about 20 steps with different ideas. So fantastic. Now, writing. What about writing? Now, writing, I've got lots to show you because I feel that that's something that teachers often are concerned about, that their students are not doing enough writing, and the problem of correcting writing, lots of challenges. Now, I'm sure many of you will be familiar with Write and Improve. And for those of you who are not, wow, this is a gift, a teacher's gift and a student's gift. Using artificial intelligence, students will write a text on the website. It's a free website, and they will get feedback in 15 seconds. So this is where we can start encouraging that independence, just a little bit of support. Now, someone in an earlier session was asking about whether the students should use Grammarly. Well, in my opinion, I think Grammarly corrects everything. That's the problem. Whereas in Write and Improve, it doesn't correct everything. It shows the student that there's an error. And it may make a suggestion, but the student actually has to edit it themselves and resend it to the computer. So if they use Write and Improve, they're involved in the process. They're not just being given the right answer. They have to think about it. So it's extremely useful. And of course, there are different tasks that you can do at all levels, including at proficiency level, C2 level, and IELTS. And you can write the text. You can do it against the clock. So the time task, so very good exam practice in that sense. And you, of course, you can, if you sign up for it, you don't have to pay, but if you create an account, then you can keep track of the activities that you've done. Your students can send you their work if you don't want to pay for a license, which you don't have to. So you can see that the student is involved in the process. There is a version called Class View, which you can use for 2 months for free. So you can see if you like it. So you don't have to use it for the paid, which allows you to actually keep track of the individual students in one place. It does it for you. But again, you can, and it actually shows you how many times they corrected it, how many times they revisited it. But you don't have to do that. You can just ask the student to use it individually and then send you the work they've done. Just to note, if you're teaching at B2 or for IELTS, there is a test zones part, which is actually paid for. But if you go into it, you'll find that there are some tasks which are free. And the reason it's interesting is it will give you a mark. It's only for B2 and IELTS. For the other levels, it will give you your CFR level and feedback. So it's useful for everyone, but the test zone is also relevant to B2 and IELTS, just so you know. So that's the test zone. So this is a B2 task, writing an essay. And of course, this is what they will find in the other part of Write and Improve. They just get a bit of extra feedback in this section. Also, to tell you, there is some new material for looking at exam criteria. So again, on the website, going to understand learners' levels, you will find that there are new guides for assessing writing. These are amazing, including for proficiency. So I know people often say there's not enough material for proficiency. Here there is, it's for all levels. So the guides look like this. Of course, they're purple for the first 3 levels and they're orange for the second 2. And this is an example from proficiency of the kind of activity that you will find in these guides. And as I said, they're free to download. They're just new, they're very new. So here is an example of getting your students to read a sample answer, think about the strengths and weaknesses, and obviously guides them to understanding what makes a good piece of writing. And of course, why is it not a band 5? So you've got an explanation of the criteria, so helping the student and the teacher understand the criteria. You've got sample pieces of writing with the band, with comments, and helps you understand that marking. So how do I get a band 5? Well, if you look at this, it will show you why someone is not achieving a band 5. So therefore, we can look at improving the writing. So going back to the classroom, and again, important place to be. So we had understanding learners' levels is where you get the guides for writing. Going back to the classroom, as I said, brings you to the self-study lesson plans as well as the normal ones. And there you'll find some great stuff for helping students' confidence and independence. As I said, these are the student-friendly lesson plans. You can see here how it takes the students, what they're going to do, and it takes them through each step, including getting them to do some research. And I heard another speaker talking about the importance about that, absolutely. And this guides the student in their research so that they're getting something to write about and obviously improving their vocabulary and linguistic range as they do so. Strategies for being better at doing their planning, and of course, referring to an exam type question. And giving them a structure, of course, how to paragraph, what do they need to do in each one. And then they get student-friendly criteria, so converting it into a question so the student can relate to it, and thinking about checking their own work, as also some other speakers have mentioned. It's very important. And again, using those criteria, they can also look at potentially doing peer assessment, use sharing on something like Padlet, where the students can then focus on a particular criteria. It's not a good idea to ask them to do all, but you might, for example, focus on organisation and get the students to look at that organisation criteria and think about their peers' writing. Preparing for speaking. Again, there are lesson plan materials for self-access or self-study with clear examples. You'll recognize this as B2, comparing pictures. There's also similar material for C1 and also for the lower levels. And you'll also find how it takes the students through the language that they're going to need to use. The other thing that it does is get the students to reflect on their performance, thinking about time management, thinking about whether they're using a range of vocabulary, not just about accuracy, but also thinking about those other criteria, the organisation and obviously range of vocabulary. The other thing to go with that, of course, is getting students to record themselves. So this student here actually recorded herself, sent her recording to her teacher, but she was also encouraged by her teacher to use a table to think about her performance, and also the teacher used the same. And the teacher gave verbal feedback to the student. So this is quicker for teachers as well, perhaps to record their feedback. And so teachers and students can use resources like these. There are others. If you're not using your phone or not using WhatsApp, you might want to use audio recorders like voicespice.com or vocaroo.com. And they are free, by the way. So yes, so that for me is essential. I also think that with the problems of remote teaching, this is a way to get students to do more speaking and for teachers to be able to have access to what students are doing, because they can share it with the teachers. And it's very easy from these voice recorders to send a link to the teacher so that they can make sure that they have finished. So just a couple more things, James, and I've nearly done. Just to show you another tool which I discovered recently. It says writing, but it's useful for speaking too, where you can actually create a selection of random pictures. So again, super for whatever level you're working at, but obviously choosing 2 for B2, choosing 3 for C1, and obviously all the other levels too. Pick a wheel allows you to practice doing the same questions, very useful at the lower level. It randomizes the choice of the question, and so the student would answer the question that comes up on the screen using pickawheel.com, and you can put in the questions that you want the students to answer. New very recently produced are information for candidates. So these are very useful, again, for encouraging confidence and independence. They're all levels now, including proficiency, with tips for learning, tips about what to do on the day of the exam, common questions that students have are answered by obviously here, do's and don'ts. Again, super, and again, all free to download. So they're available now. For those of you who have dyslexic candidates and are concerned about preparing for exams, there is now new material, including a recent webinar about supporting learners and new guides which you can download, which help exam preparation for those students who have dyslexia. Again, available for young learners and available up to B2 and B2 first for schools. So you can download those and we'll make sure you get the links next week. And you can see how, again, like the writing guides, they're packed full of ideas and suggestions for teachers, which hopefully you'll find useful, including lesson plans, for example, for preparing for a particular paper. So really, these are just fresh just off the bat. Coming soon, and I think with this I'm going to finish, is to say that on the, I think it's the 2nd and the 9th, there's going to be a new webinar to introduce the mock test kit. Teachers have been asking for this for a long time. And so the mock test kit will show you how to use the existing sample tests. It's not a bank of tests, just to say that, but it obviously refers you to the sample tests, and there are tips, guidelines, and suggestions about delivering a mock test: when, why, what stage, how do you deliver it when you're online, on a short course, etc. Loads of ideas, and how to give feedback to your learners, checking for exam readiness. So that's the latest. I just want to remind you on behalf of my colleagues in the Greek team that you can book a meeting with the Cambridge team. And again, this will be included in the links, and these links will allow you to stay in touch with us.